Shalom. All right, shalom to the Jewish community and everybody. All right, Israel been Israel for the Israelite brotherhood. All right, what I want to say is that you can see in the Promised Land how the Jewish community is having a hard time, and it's set to get worse, and it's not gonna get better. And the easiest, simple solution is to bring us Israelites back home so we can solve this Israelite issue, which will lead to the solving of the land issue. It's no prophecy in here that we should be against the Ashkenazi community when our captivity ends. And it's a fact that our captivity is gonna end without a shadow of a doubt, that Almighty Yah is gonna bring us home. It's gonna, it's gonna happen. It's impossible to stop. And I done made all kind of suggestions and proposals that the Israelites need to settle in our heritage that's been prophesied by Prophet Obadiah. It's no way to change that. And that Almighty Yah is gonna make it happen. Now, all the troubles and finances and economic difficulties that the Jewish community is going to can be brought to an end by a simple act. They would rather spend billions of dollars on missiles and billions of dollars on everything than to bring us back, which would end the whole land issue. It's nowhere in Tanakh that we would fight or try to drive Ashkenazi out of our heritage, but there is prophecies that Ashkenazi or the Japhetic tribes can dwell in the tents of Shem, and then that's Genesis 9:27. So it's no way to change that. And what I recommend is that the Ashkenazi community work through the Israelite brotherhood, because we got a lot of Israelites. They got a lot of misinformation as part of their foundation, and they don't understand what's going on, and that how that those Israelites' doctrines are not suitable for the Promised Land. We don't need nobody there worshiping and believing in the Yawashi. We don't need no Israelites there calling Ashkenazi Edomites. We don't need no Israelites there that don't understand our prophecy land and where we have to settle. We don't need no Israelites there that don't understand that. And these Israelite organizations that got these doctrines that's opposite that or opposed that don't need to settle in the Promised Land. They history got to change, or they have to change individually and then come up under the Israelite brotherhood history, which is correct history because I'm using the Tanakh as my history. But I want to encourage my Ashkenazi brothers and sisters that the Israelite community is not against you, and not the Israelite brotherhood and the folks that follow the Israelite brotherhood teachings. So it's very important that you make an extreme distinction between the Israelite brotherhood and those other organizations that got labeled up under hate and anti-Semitism. I explained the word anti-Semitism and its origin, so the Israelite brotherhood can't fall up under that title, and that we're not against the mixed peoples, and we're only against the Edomites that's occupying our land and our heritage where we have to settle. Now this can save Ashkenazi billions of dollars, as well as save their sons and their daughters from the wars that they are constantly in. Even if you make settlements and ceasefire with those Edomite related groups, that is gonna flare up because they look at you as an invader, as somebody that's coming in to steal land, and that have stolen land, and that have murdered the Edomites' children and so forth. So that's gonna be forgiving to them. They're not going to forgive that. And it's going to be constant conflicts that you're not going to be able to stop. And as of now, you're kind of like starting to swing towards the losing end. And the reason that I say that that's happening, because Almighty Yah is going to drive you in a corner, man, to where you don't have nothing to do but settle this Israelite issue. And I encourage you to do it now and start making solid efforts to embrace the Israelite brotherhood and help me get in a situation where I can help you. You know, we can work together. You know what I'm saying? We're brothers and sisters based on our father's Noah's prophecy and what he told his children, who are our forefathers, you know, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, you know, that we're all family members from the prophet Noah, and as well as being the creation of Almighty Yah. The only reason that the Ashkenazi community is in the promised land now, dwelling in Shem's house, is because we Israelites wouldn't let the Egyptian religion go, and that how we constantly did Egyptian religion, and we had to be driven off. So Almighty Yah called Ashkenazi under the title Scythian, that controlled the Chaldean army. You know, they destroyed Assyria, and then they came and drove us off the land. And that's what the book of Jeremiah is about. I go into the history in detail. So it's no getting around, you know, historical events and things that happened that shaped the situation that, you know, the world is in today. You know, I know that you Ashkenazi, the Jewish community, want to be seen as the chosen people and as the only ones that have the right to the promised land. But that's false. And that's changing real fast. And that you have a lot of Israelites around the world, especially in America, that, you know, we considered captivity, you know, and that we understand what's going on and who we are. And that's not finna be able to change. We're not finna be Negroes, blacks, and African Americans, and how that those titles are fading away real fast. And that how we are gonna be recognized as who we are, the Israelites. So what I want to encourage the Jewish community to do is support the Israelite brotherhood, and let's bring this land issue to an end. Let's bring this land issue to an end. That we're not trying to drive you out of the promised land, and how we want you to dwell. And you can dwell in the north. I done made videos explaining this, that you can dwell in the north, and that we don't have no problems with you being on the promised land. The only problems that we have with you is that you steadily trying to convince the world that you're the only Israelites or the chosen people. And that's not so, because if that was the case, then them folks wouldn't be getting you, and the wars that you are constantly in wouldn't be happening, because you would be settling the prophecies of how the Israelites should come home, live in their heritage, and that how you will bring everybody to Almighty Yah, and then how Jerusalem will be a place of peace, and so forth, and that how you cannot achieve that with the violence that's been committed already. And then I explain how the organization BRICS want to drive the Ashkenazi community out. They look at them as the root to all the problems that's going on in what they call the Middle East. You know, and that how that they, you know, point the finger at the Ashkenazi community explicitly, and that how Islam see the Sephardim as the Israelites and not the ones that's causing the trouble. But I explain their heritage in relations to the Israelite heritage. You know, it's a lot of videos on the Israelite Brotherhood site that explain truthful history about the Israelite issue. So, you know, I'm constantly extending my hands out to the Ashkenazi community, trying to get y'all to see this truth and understand that the problems you're having is not gonna go away. That's like in the promised land, You know, when I was walking around going to all the government agencies trying to get you to listen and hear me, and how I was rejected and ridiculed, and a whole lot of things, that, didn't go right when I was over there, as far as rejection from all the government agencies that I took the Israelite proposal for settlement to, and then how after, I left, that war instantly come to the land, and that how that's not gonna change, and how it's gonna get worse. That's like Iran. Mean they waiting for any chance to start the war, and how that they done recruit already with weaponry and so forth, and how that they can't wait to unleash weapons and missiles on the promised land, because they know you're vulnerable, and they know that you don't have the technology to stop it now, and how that they want to drive you out, and the next time that they're going to destroy infrastructure so bad that you probably won't get a chance to recover, and how I'm extending the olive branch to you and trying to get you to understand that we are Israelites, and that's not going to change, and how you have to accept that now. You have to accept the fact that we are Israelites, and that we fit the prophecies, and that we fit exactly the history of the Israelites that went into Egypt, into Africa, to do the Egyptian Sahara religions, which caused the transatlantic slave trade, which make our history identical to the curses that Prophet Moses said will be on the Israelites in chapter 28 of Deuteronomy. We the only ones on the face of this earth that have suffered the tragedies of the curses. No Jewish history is identical to the curses in chapter 28 of Deuteronomy. You basically can't even cherry pick verses to align your history with the curses, and then how that Ashkenazi been prosperous under the Israelite title for a long time until now, because our captivity has to end. Our captivity has to end, and there's no way to stopping it from ending. Now, what you don't want to happen, Ashkenazi, is that you be driven out the land, and that the other folks that's not in agreement with you bring us back, because then you could be locked out. You could be locked out, and that how nobody would want you to come back, and that could possibly happen. But from what prophecy shows, I think that you're the one, since you drove us out during the Babylonian wars, that you have to bring us back. That's the miracle right there. That's the miracle right there. And then when you bring us back, that is no hardship, or no animosity that we will show towards you, but that we will be happy that you assist us in bringing us back in our heritage. And then I say that we can work hand in hand with securing the land and rebuilding, and then us living meant together in peace. We can coexist in peace, and then how we won't even challenge you with the Israelite title, because we'll all be one family in the land. It'll be brothers. We'll be brothers and sisters, just like how our ancestors was on the ark, when we was all together believing in Almighty Yah on the ark. It's why, Noah's children were saved, because they believed in Almighty Yah and they followed their father. We'll be the same way. Is that Japhet children, Ashkenazi, who is a son of Gomer, who is a son of Japhet, can dwell in the tents of Shem. That prophecy is not going to change. Now it's time to bring it to fruition, because Shem is not there. Now you got Israelites there that's living in the desert, and we know that they made an agreement with the Jewish community that they wouldn't solicit or try to bring no Israelites back out of captivity to settle the land. And then that's why come nobody has never heard from them since we've been in captivity, besides them, saying that they African Hebrew Israelites and then trying to push their dietary laws, out in the world and so forth like that. But far as them trying to help us in our captivity, that how that they ain't never tried to do that. So, they are not the representation of the Israelite community, and how the representation of the Israelite community is the Israelite brotherhood and us Israelites in captivity. And that how that once this Israelite issue is settled, that is going to be peace around the world, and it's time for peace. It seemed like the Ashkenazi community would be tired of fighting and trying to defend that chosen title myth that's on them, that come from a misunderstanding. See, the misunderstanding is that the vast majority of the Jewish community don't know real history, and they don't know that they settled the land during the Babylonian Wars, and that how that they lived in Scythopolis, and how that they been on and off the promised land, and that how Christianity kind of reinforced that we the chosen people myth that Ashkenazi have on them, and that how that all this got to fade away, and that how if you bring us in and to settle our land, that we'll let it fade away naturally, and how we wouldn't put just extra emphasis on it, and that how that we would want to live in peace with everybody besides the Edomites that's on our heritage that we have to settle and have control of. It's not in prophecy for us to share our land with the Edomites that's on the land that we have to settle. So I, reach out my hand with the olive branch to the Ashkenazi community to help me bring this Israelite issue to an end, which will bring the land issue to an end, and that how we can live in peace and worship Hashem together, as the Ashkenazi community call him the name, but we Israelites call the Creator by His name, Yah. So we can work together, and it's up to y'all to extend this first reach out, because I've been there and I've been in the promised land trying to get you guys to see what's taking place and what is gonna take place. So it's best that y'all start trying to make efforts to work with me, and so we can bring this land issue to an end, because like I say, you're losing billions right now, and it's not gonna change, and how it's gonna get worse, because the Iranian technology that was used to destroy your infrastructure is secretly being passed off to its proxy groups, who's gonna do what they have to do. That they look at you as an invader, an occupier, and an oppressor. But they don't know that Almighty Yah sent you there long time ago to chase us Israelites out for doing the Egyptian religion. That's like another thing. We've been in captivity a long time, and we done paid the price. We done paid a terrible price for doing the Egyptian religion, and it's time for us to come home. That's like when our forefather Abraham got ownership and was told that he would, be, in the promised land, and that was his land, and then how did our ancestors went to Egypt and then was in bondage in Egypt, but how the promised land still remained our land, and how Almighty Yah brung us out to the promised land. Even though our father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had, passed away, and we wasn't on the land, but how the land was still ours through a promise. Well, it's still ours through a promise that's written here in the Tanakh that cannot be changed. So I encourage y'all to try to find some type of way to reach out, and then let's bring this land issue to an end, so we can live in peace, and then we can prosper too, because we're gonna work together with securing the land. We're gonna work together with securing the land, and it's easy for us to explain to the other nations who we are, and then that'll be a reason to stop all hostilities right there. And the hostilities are not gonna stop till we come home. So I encourage the Ashkenazi community to start making efforts soon now to bring us home through the Israelite brotherhood so we can live in peace. Shalom to everybody.